can tell our friends, and they can have my things when we're dead. But we gonna live forever. We gonna live forever. You can tell our friends.
Welcome to the BOYSCAST with Ryan Long, first podcast exclusively for the boys. What an episode we have planned. Danny Mullen, if you guys know who he is. If you don't, you should. He's been doing this insane stuff. Tons of people. He was one of the most recommended guests on the pod. And this guy just does wild stuff. He's blown up over the last little while, and he's like a super interesting dude. In addition to that, everyone should be happy to know that I got verified on Twitter immediately. Within an hour, Andrew Yang, starfucker, adds me. You know, he starts telling people he wants a piece of the action. He wants in on the Ryan Long business. So apparently, Mr. Yang wants to be part of the boys. And before we start, I've warned everyone. I told them it was coming. Sponsor number 2 is, and everyone knows, as I said, I've been very careful about picking the sponsorships. And this is one that I wanted, which is Manscaped. Is that not a pretty good sponsor for the boys, Manscaped? And they have these boxes that they just sent me one. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll show you what it looks like. But basically all the different stuff comes in it. And it's essentially like the best present you can get something. So you can get 20% off of that. And it makes like a sick Christmas present, or if you want to get it for yourself. Because as people know, I'm a pretty big shaver. People always kill me on it because I was big chest shaver, which I have a big tattoo there, so I think that's part of it. Armpit shaver. My buddy Waldo, he used to always shave his legs, but he also had big tattoos on his legs. My buddy, like my best friends from Toronto, but he used to always say, sometimes you just get a little carried away in the shower. You start shaving, but the BOYSCAST has an official Manscaped sponsorship, and you use the promo code BOYSCAST for 20% off. And with Christmas coming, it is time to gear up and get yourself the gift of shaving this holiday season. I'm talking about Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0, and the boys all have perfect packages. I don't need to tell you. Nice pieces. There was also a lot of package talk with Danny Mullen. And a big part of it is they have the way that they've designed it is so you can't get cut. You know, they have all these like guards and stuff, because that's another, going back to my friend, he used to always say that he had so many cuts on his dick, and he used to always be like, yeah, I'm off limits for 2 weeks. It's like, what's going on with you? He goes, yeah, I don't know, I'm bad at shaving. So, but everyone's had that, and then you start like dicking around with it, and then it just never goes away, and you can't really just have cuts on your dick because girls think that, you know, potentially you're a fucking herb case. This is the last thing you want, especially with a new one. You show up and you got cuts on it. So you're going to want this. And don't just use the same trimmer for your face as you're using on your balls, which I definitely have. They also have, the package comes with a different trimmer for each. And Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0 also includes the crop preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant, and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits. Why not put the deodorant on the smelliest part of your body? Maybe your body, or probably smell good. And it comes with boxers. It comes with a whole bunch of other stuff. The whole box is pretty solid in general. So get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BOYSCAST at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code BOYSCAST. Clean your nuts and make Santa proud this year. So everyone has been very kind to support the sponsors, and I only have good ones. So if you support the sponsor, you support me. And now, getting into the episode with the man, the legend, Danny Mullen. Danny motherfucking Mullen. You know what? You have a hat on right now. You look very British. That's the first thing that I thought before I heard you talk. I was like, oh, it's like a British guy.
Oh, do I, mate? I was just is that Australian? I don't know. I was just watching a video that I'm editing, and I'm handcuffed to a railing in a restaurant. It's a long story, this stunt we pulled. And there's an English restaurant manager who's in my face talking shit to me. So I'm familiar with British people right now. They're fresh in my psyche.
See, I think the Danny Mullen story is cool because I fucking, when I like in the last 6 months, I had like 5 or 6 people. There was a few names that kept popping up that people kept being like, you got to check this guy out. And they're always like, oh, this guy's wild. And, you know, you're always like, yeah, I bet he's fucking so wild.
Yeah.
And then I went and I was like, yeah, this guy's pretty fucking wild.
Yeah.
But, and then I talked to you and you were like, oh, yeah, you kind of had the same thing where, you know, people reached out. So you've been also kind of killing it in COVID, right?
Absolutely, man. I take pride in the fact that the day the entirety of Los Angeles locked down, our crew was on a mission in Los Angeles to film. We took no heed of it from hour one. And I'm glad I did. A lot of YouTubers stopped uploading and they started putting out shitty in quarantine content. And I just didn't stop, and there were no consequences. I don't think I got COVID, and we prospered from it, the channel.
Yo, it's such an interesting time for that because it really is like separating it's kind of like if you're doing stand up and it's easy for everyone to kill when there's a good set, but then now they sort of took everything away and it's separating like who's a pussy and who's not.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I do see it, I guess, as a pussy, not pussy thing. I think the whole thing's fucking stupid, honestly. I haven't checked the stats, but I'm pretty sure more people have died from smoking Camel Lights this year than from the coronavirus. But we're choosing to shut down the entire economy in some states. And I'm in the mindset that I'm ready to die on any video shoot I go out on anyway. So the coronavirus didn't change it much for me.
It's kind of like, you know how with like chicks, when people are like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, chicks rule, right? You're like, you have to not care to be good at girls.
Yeah.
It's sort of like with someone like you. That's why it's like, well, I can tell that you're actually fucking kind of a wild man. Like even with the corona stuff, where it's like, they're like, oh, they're going to make it 10 people in the house. Maybe they'll make it 8. You're like, I mean, make it 1. I don't give a shit because I'm not obeying any of it. Like you can make it 0 people in my house allowed. It's going to be irrelevant to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good mindset with COVID or without to not really give a shit, because so many people on YouTube, since things have become, I mean, basically since Trump has been in office, there's been a lot of PC social justice warrior backlash toward a lot of people. And a lot of big YouTubers have been apologizing, deleting tweets, completely cleaning up their content.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a short-term fear move that isn't going to lead anywhere good. And people like us who continue doing what we think is funny are going to stand out in stark relief, and it's going to benefit us in the end.
Dude, it's such a fear thing. And it's like the fear, basically like fear in addition to a million other things, it just makes everyone have the same points. It makes everyone have the same content. And you go, I think that's what it is, true, where there's a little bit of, it's not even fear as much as like they don't have the confidence to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean? I doubt you're like irrational. You're like, okay, this stuff could happen, but you're like, yeah, okay, well then it'll happen. You're like, oh, people get mad at you. Okay, then people could get mad. Because a lot of people are sort of, they're not like confident who they are or their like belief system. But some people also are just kind of, they're like wired to have low risk tolerance or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are just in it for the money, which being just in it for the money is ironically a bad way to make money. People like me and you who are in it because we have strong convictions about the world and what's funny and not funny. We'll stick to our guns and it'll pay off, I guess.
Yeah, it really is. Like, there's so many people that I feel like that's another thing when it comes to, you see the people that their fans kind of like run them. Like there's so many people that they, with like a band, there's the certain like bands and musicians that they kind of like create a style and they create like a way to dress, and their fans all start dressing them again. And then there's the other bands that it's almost like they're looking at their fans being like, hey, what are we dressing like? And it all boils down to that thing where you're like, oh, you didn't have any opinions to begin with.
Yeah.
This is all just out of the gate. You all just looked around and you go, what do people do? Okay, I'll do that. And then you just end up having the same opinions, the same everything as everybody else.
Yeah.
For someone like you, you thrive in the darkness. People are like,
I love it, dude. I don't even read my comments or my messages because I don't want any input, even from dedicated fans, because then I start thinking in my head out on a shoot, Skater Punk 66 told me in the comment section that I need to do more of this thing. And then I start thinking when I'm on shoots about what that guy said, and I'm trying to do more of that, when it should be, like you mentioned, like a trend-setting fucking band. Like that should be our attitude. Like Nirvana, fucking their vision was to turn punk a little poppy and make it a little more palatable. Then 6 million other asshole bands rolled in and tried the same thing, and nobody ever heard about any of those guys again, or their career lasted one album. You got to be the originator. And to do that, you got to generate ideas from within.
what do you think your brand is? What do you consider it?
That's a good question. I'm having a hard time even figuring that out, dude. I write some funny ideas down for videos and I try to come up with some sort of overarching story and we
Yeah.
go out and do it. I think my brand is, Ryan, doing what I think is funny with a little bit of mind paid to what's going to piss people off, and raising a middle finger to all the drones I went to college with who are now working at Morgan Stanley, and raising a middle finger to all the YouTubers out there who are doing ad-friendly content and ads for
Yeah.
Procter & Gamble.
I'll tell you, you are kind of a bit of like a trendsetter. I mean, this happens to me too. It's almost like, you remember when that thing where no one could run like a 10-second 100 meters, and then as soon as one person did it, like 10 other people did it that year, because you kind of don't realize it's possible. And same with like that happens in like business and everything else. But I think I see that with me where I'll like do something, no one else is doing it, then immediately 10 other people can do it. And I remember with you, I saw a few of those where I kind of felt like I was like, oh, you can do that. Like I remember the one that sticks out to me is when what's your co-host name?
Leo.
So Leo got like a Me Too.
He got Me Too'd. Yeah, after he was on The Bachelorette, the popular show that's watched by like 6 billion people, he was sort of an asshole on that show. He fucked around with the other guys, like talked shit to him. And then a disgruntled girl who probably was 30 pounds overweight and had no romantic prospects, she tweeted out something he had messaged her when he was in college. It was, I guess, a comment underneath one of her Facebook photos. And she was posing in a swimsuit. And he wrote, "You need my big dick," which is maybe the douchiest thing you could ever do. But it's kind of funny.
How big's his dick, by the way?
It's slightly above average. He might say it's firmly above average. I'm going to say slightly. But,
he's like a 6.5, but in his mind, he's like packing massive heat.
Absolutely. In his mind, he's 6.7 at least.
Because you're right. If you're a tiny bit above average, that means tons of girls have told you had a nice piece. So
I fucking wish that are true. I think I might be a couple millimeters above average, but I've heard my dick is small way more than I've heard it's big.
Girls say your dick is small?
No, I had a nasty habit, Ryan, of when I was in college, just walking around naked through my fraternity house, down the streets of Westwood. Totally soft. And I've got one of my nuts looks like it has elephantitis. It just swelled up the day I hit puberty.
Dude, I just talked about this. I had the same thing.
Mine never came back to earth, though. It's still big. And so from a perspective point of view, it's awful. It makes my lip cock look tiny.
So the nuts is the issue.
That's bad. Yeah, if I were neutered, I would be sort of sad, but part of me would be psyched. Like if I'd been an opera singer in the 1700s where they did that, it would be all good for my penis's career.
So you go, okay, so this guy gets the Me Too allegation. How big of a deal was it?
It was pretty big because that was, I think, in early 2018. So we're talking 6 months after Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. fell. Also, that fame you get from The Bachelorette is really fleeting, but it's really powerful when it's there. Because again, I think they get real numbers, like 32 million viewers. It's one of the most viewed programs in the world. And who's the audience? 99% women. Who tend to be the ones that get all riled up about Me Too? Obviously women. So he had to take off all the comments on his Instagram. He had to disable those.
Were people just killing him?
Oh, death threats constantly. Tons of people making videos. People would say things to him in public. It was bad.
Wow. And all because, so in high school, he wrote a thing saying, my dick's, you got to check out this dick.
He was a senior in college, but still, it was a while ago. He's 34.
my friend the other day was literally like, he's like, I sent too many dick pics like back in the day. And he started going through his Instagram. Like he went like 200, fucking pages deep trying to find every man. He was trying to unsend all the messages.
No,
like,
dude, it's
shit that he sent at 3 a.m. like 8 years ago.
Dude, it's absolutely a valid fear. I did the same thing.
Oh, it's Twitter, the number one fear.
Yeah, and I sent a lot of dick pictures, unfortunately. I just talked about limp penis is my great weakness. I used to send dick pictures not only with my cock limp, but with my face in them when I was 20 or 21. And I know there are probably 10 to 15 of those floating around that I assume they're going to surface someday.
So I have the same thing, but I have all these tattoos and stuff too. But I was I'm 35, so you 30, right?
31, just turned 31.
So you're a tiny bit younger than me, but there was, when I went to university, like there wasn't really the dick pic culture because the phones were shittier. You had to mail a Polaroid of your dick, old-fashioned style. Yeah.
And it's good for me, actually, because Me Too, not Me Too, but Me Too, I was sending dick pictures when it was flip phone. And so I'm almost positive nobody still possesses the flip phone that has my dick cachet.
Part, yeah.
It's nice. We did most of our scum dogging before mobile apps even existed, so I think we got kind of lucky. Whereas kids who were coming of age right before 2017 might be fucked because every inappropriate thing they ever sent is in the cloud or in the Instagram DMs. That's not good.
Dude, I've been watching, I pay attention to, alternative press and the band sites and stuff like that. And they don't even report news anymore. They literally just report another one down.
Another rock star?
You're like, oh, this band. You're like, oh, they have a new album coming out. You're like, no, their guitar tech showed his nuts in 2001. It's just nonstop.
One of my favorite bands, brand new. You probably know about Jesse Lacey, Me Too, a New York guy.
Yeah. I think he had a couple.
Yeah, he was one of the best lyricists of that movement. I mean, I guess the music was pretty good too, but I loved them. They were my favorite band in high school.
Really?
And it came out I loved them in high school. And it came out, their new album, Science Fiction's fucking kick-ass too. It came out in 2017. But it also came out, unfortunately, that Jesse Lacey was stroking himself on an early form of Skype with a 15-year-old when he was 20.
Oh, I remember. I remember that.
And it was alleged.
And then he sort of came out.
Evidence.
Didn't he come out and apologize? And he was like, I have a wife now, and I was an alcoholic. They always say that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was a very general apology for a lot of philandering over many years, but he didn't deny it, so maybe it's true.
They had I used to be part owner of this website called The Hard Times, and we did a festival in California that they headlined. And I know a lot of people. I'm a little older, I was more into punk, so they were a little younger for me, I think. But when I was when we did this festival, they played so they went on the stage and this light show, they played in the background where there were shadows. You couldn't see them. And they just stood there. So they might as well not even have been there.
Yeah.
They had this insane light show. 4 of them were standing there. All you saw was a shadow for 40 minutes. And I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. It sounded good, but it was crazy. I go, who let them do this? No one's this sucks, dude.
Their last tour, there was a wall separating them from the crowd. It was a fucking Roger Waters Pink Floyd production. There was a literal glass wall that dropped down and separated them from the audience. But that was their thing. They were an enigma. They didn't do any interviews. They didn't promote any albums. And their last album,
he just did Skype interviews.
Yeah. Without any kind of dialogue to it.
Well, these guys took
physical.
Yeah, dude, these guys took his allegation and they went on the streets and they were like, hey, this is the Me Too allegation, trying to pick up girls with the Me Too allegation. It was a little bit like that. I mean, even with me, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would have had the balls to do that. But then now you go maybe
me and Leo.
So now when I see that, I'm like, if anything, now I would go further. So it always, it kind of reminds me of in Toronto, me and my 4 comedian friends that were kind of inventing this little style of comedy. It was always that. It was always someone would do something. And then it wasn't even that, and now I could do that. It was now I could go farther. You have to one up them. So I think it's, I mean, do you consider yourself part of a movement with the Nelk Boys and what's that other guy? His name's Danny too. He's your buddy, isn't he?
Danny Duncan. Yeah.
That guy's wild too.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they are more lifestyle YouTubers.
Yeah, you're comedy, but they're doing crazy ass shit.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And they're wildly successful and they're really good guys. And both of them have helped me out a lot, both squads. But yeah, I guess I am more rooted in comedy and there's a little less concern for editing or for churning out the hottest merchandise every month in massive quantities, which I mean, I wish I was good at that stuff, but you got to pick your thing and there's only so much time in the day.
I know, dude. They're fucking. Those guys are legitimately merch companies. I was just talking about this, but it's kind of funny to watch. But those guys, the Nelk Boys, are funny. Because they're from Canada, so I remember when they were doing straight up. I mean, they still do pranks, but I get what you mean. It's more of a lifestyle thing. But then, I remember what was funny to them for me originally was when they were going to the hockey arenas and pretending they were scouts.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, okay, these guys are fucking funny.
They're really funny. They're tremendously funny in person too.
Yeah, and you do the same thing where you do the 40 minutes every week, which is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Why do you do whenever there is a part of me that people always say that to me. They're like, why do you do so much content or whatever? And I kind of watched you and I was like, why don't you just do 20 minutes a week? Like, what's the benefit of doing 40? It seems so crazy.
My business model is I have a Patreon too, where I release unused content. So there's a big incentive to shoot more than we need. So we have a good product to put out on Patreon. And then also, I don't know, I read in a book once, I think it was a Tony Robbins book, that the way to get rich is just to give. And I work 6 days a week. I take one day off, and 6 days is a lot of days to get shit done. So I have a lot of time to write and prepare. And I have the money now where I can fly out my team. We can buy a lot of props, book Airbnbs, tours for like museums, or like go on a fucking roller coaster, do whatever I need to get the content. So I just feel that now it's my responsibility to put out as good of a product as I can. And that means for me a lot of good stuff in a week, not just a quick 10-minute video.
I know. What's like were you a big into fucking Tom Green and like Ali G and all that stuff?
Ali G, absolutely. I'm sure, just like you, he's now dead to us after seeing the new Amazon fucking new Amazon Borat was garbage.
Yeah, I'm friends with Kurt Metzger. He wrote on Who Is America, and
I like Kurt Metzger. He's a badass.
Yeah, he's super funny, but I mean, I guess I won't say what he like said about him behind the scenes, but like it sounds like.
I would love to hear what Kurt Metzger said about Sacha Baron Cohen. Can you at least give me a hint?
He said he's a genius. No, but there's with
no, I'm not gonna let you get past this. It seems
no, but he knows them. I think the gist is that like with all these people, they don't even like see the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like with someone like Sacha Baron Cohen, if you said that, okay, for example, the fact that you or like for censorship and stuff like that, like nothing you did like coming up would be able to be on any of these platforms under the rules that you're out there like championing, right?
Yeah.
And they don't even have a problem with that hypocrisy. Like they're almost a little bit innocent, and maybe part of that's they came up at a different time and now they're like so in the system that like didn't really this like system of censorship and taking people off air the way that it does now almost didn't exist in their era. So it's almost like a level of naivety more than it is a level of like sinisterness.
We were talking about at the top of the show, YouTubers who, after Trump got in office and after Me Too, disavowed all their old content and said, hey, I'm a new person now. I apologize for everything. Sacha Baron Cohen is maybe the greatest example of that, because the Ali G show, the original one, is my comedy Bible. I've seen every episode countless times. Bruno was great. The original Borat was great. Some of the other stuff he did, The Dictator, kind of stunk, but it didn't upset me. It wasn't vile. Dude, this last Borat sequel was just a propaganda piece. There was no sense of levity. There was no passion behind it. They shoehorned in bits about Facebook ad hate speech that just came out of nowhere. Had nothing to do with the plot. I was thoroughly disgusted, and I was watching a hero die slowly as I completed the film.
Well, he actually did one worse than where you're and I've talked about this before, but in my opinion, he did one worse than disavow his oath content. He rewrote history where he's like, no, my content was actually fighting the power. He said that I was making Borat to fight homophobia and, to fight anti-Semitism. And I always said like, okay, well, why were you fucking with feminists at the rally? What were you fighting there? It's like, no, you thought it was funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a big counterexample to that, but I don't think that he necessarily was doing that or not doing that. He was just doing what you and I do.
Of course.
He was doing true comedy where the point was to get a laugh. And then maybe the secondary effect was for you to think a little bit about society and what made those jokes funny.
Yeah.
But now it's just, I had a professor once in a screenwriting class who said, it's all about story. If you have something to say, that thing should announce itself in the process of crafting a good story. You can't lead with the thing you want to say. Otherwise, it's going to turn everybody off. Sacha Baron Cohen unashamedly led with what he wanted to say in Borat 2, and it was uninteresting and it was offensive.
Well, when you make content like that, you're actually not trying to change people's opinions. You're trying to like reassure the people that like you, but more so you're trying to like gain their approval by like doing something mean to the people that they disagree with.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like trying to convince anyone of anything. You're like, look, I'll give a shot to them too. We're kicking them while they're down. Like, okay, good. I'll get it. Right. Look, I did my kick like a good, like, shit's guard.
Yeah. And that's another thing is politically, I would say I'm conservative but not aggressively so. I would say I'm like a moderate conservative or like a
What
libertarian.
does that even mean? Okay, so what does that mean? Like, because you grew up where? Like the Midwest or whatever?
No, I grew up in California, Northern California.
Oh,
But
okay.
but like a good example of my upbringing is my dad is conservative. He didn't like Obama at all, but he also refused to vote for Trump. He wrote in like John McCain during the Trump Hillary election.
Okay.
But the reason I tend to lean conservative now is because it's the unpopular thing to do. I said
Yeah.
earlier that a little bit. I do mostly what I think is funny, but a little bit of it is to piss people off. Like we just went and tailgated voting for Trump for a video.
Right.
And that was just purely to piss people off. Like, so it seems so uncool to me to do what Jimmy Kimmel or Seth Meyers does and just like suck the anti-Trumper left-wing social justice warriors dicks like Sacha Baron Cohen did. There's no bravery in that.
Well, everyone's
like,
already saying it too. So even like artistically, there's nothing there because even if you think you agree with that point, it's been made 10,000 times, by big platforms. So
totally.
Even if you do agree with it. I thought the tailgating stuff was funny. It was like, you're just like, and people are like, you're not supposed to do that. And you're like, okay, well, we did. Like, what are you going to do about it? I was doing interviews and so many people were like, oh, like recently, a lot of people be like, so how do you do that stuff? Like, aren't you afraid or whatever? And I'm kind of like, for one, this is like right now is the least crazy version of myself. Like when I was younger, I was like an actually insane person. Now I'm, saying controversial things, like which is pales in comparison to the kind of shit. That's why with Sacha Baron Cohen, and the same with, I mean, you're only a little bit younger than me, but those other guys, probably some of those YouTubers are like 25, and I feel like I'm kind of in the middle or whatever. But there is this thing of, you can never be really like as crazy or energetic as the young guys. Like when I watch myself 25, I'm like, I can never be that crazy again. But then when you watch someone that's like older than you, a lot of times you're like, well, yeah, but they're better, right? Like I watch these young people and I'm like, yeah, but I'm way better at this than them.
Yeah.
And so you want to keep getting better, and you're going to lose some of that edge and some of that fearlessness as you get older.
I don't know, man. It depends. There are people like Jeff Bezos from Amazon who's working harder than he ever did, and he's worth $69 trillion. But
he's not as fearless. He wouldn't do any moves that would potentially turn that company into zero, right? Like it's about taking those like crazy shots. Like I feel like even Danny Mullen might do something that like might get you arrested for 2 years, whereas like I might be a little more apprehensive than I would when I was 25 to do something like really the next level crazy or the same.
I mean, I definitely draw the line about doing anything illegal, and I have a tremendous respect for the police, and I'll always tell them that when they come, and I never fuck around with the police or be a dickhead. We've been stopped by officers maybe like 10 times, and they've always just been like, oh, that's pretty funny what you're doing. All right, you guys are good to go. So I don't think
so you think you're at your peak craziness right now?
Yeah, I guess. But like, I've worried about that once I have enough money to retire, that I'll just retreat to doing podcasts. And
but I don't think
way less edgy.
I don't think it's that. I mean, maybe you're taking it like more negatively than what I'm saying, because I'm saying it sort of as a positive. It's like the trick is to just improve at your craft and your like humanity and everything you're doing in your life, whether that be business. And even if that's 30%, and then if you get 10% less, crazy with whatever that be, like your relationship, your business, it's just, and some of that craziness that you had when you're younger is irrational. So it does make sense to sort of, you'd be a perfect example of something that when I see it, think of like stunts or whatever, like the kind of stuff we do, right? When I was like 20, I was just doing these insane stunts. And when I look back, really all of it was, okay, let's try to get kicked out of places. Like I didn't really know I had one trick in my thing. I needed like an event, when I talk about like a taxable event, it was kind of like, just keep doing this bit. Like, I guess until security comes, and that's like, that'll become the gag, getting kicked out.
Absolutely. Same here. And I did, even as recently as 6 months ago, getting kicked out of places was my only gag. And also, I had to be shit-faced all the time in my videos. We had the same couple of tropes. We'd ask guys to pull their cock out. Yeah. We'd try to make out with ugly chicks. And now no, you're totally right. The focus has absolutely become less on, I'm going to get blacked out and upset a bunch of people, and has become more of how can I improve as a performer and stay sober so that I can write better material for the shoot. So what I lose in sheer craziness, as you said, I do make up for in depth of the material.
I'm watching your stuff. It's like clearly that you like really know how to do this. You know what I mean? And it's like you kind of,
thanks, man.
You probably have like 20 to 100 tricks that, anyone, that's why a lot of people, when I'm doing interviews, people go like, oh, how long does it take you to get the right guy? And you're like, I don't get the right guy. I just ask anyone. Then I have 100 questions I could ask.
Yeah.
I kind of like understand the like craft of doing that. And then there's the other thing, like you can watch even your videos. Like I feel like I see some like Howard Stern stuff where you have your crew, which is kind of like you're like developing your like whack pack, and you understand like how to. So there's just like so much more to like that world that comes more than just like, hey, I'm like the craziest guy that's like can go to the bar and like get beat up and whatever.
Yeah, it becomes to me, doing that over and over is like a comedian who releases an HBO special or a Netflix special, and then you see him live the next year and he's doing the same shit.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, not because we put out content so often, it's like not only can we not do the same jokes again, but I don't even like to repeat the same skeletal structure of comedy.
Gotcha.
If I'm using the same comedic device, and whether that be, I don't know, getting kicked out of somewhere, doing something obnoxious in public until we get kicked out, that has to develop and have a new, like something here's an example. Instead of just getting kicked out or causing a public disturbance, we just did a video based on Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. And there's a character in that novel named Pew, who's a blind beggar. He's a pirate, though, and he raids Jim Hawkins' inn looking for a treasure map. The British cavalry comes in, all the pirates scatter, and Pew gets trampled because he's too blind to find his way away. So we just turned that into dining and ditching while blindfolded. I came in dressed as a pirate with a blindfold.
Yeah.
My buddy Leo got me too, dumped out all of his food on the ground after the server brought it out, called the server a cocksucker, then handcuffed me to a post in the restaurant and fled. So not only were we kicked out, but I couldn't leave physically because I was handcuffed. And like, that's a new comedic skeleton versus just going in and causing a ruckus and getting asked to leave. I couldn't leave physically.
And you kind of knew, like, you don't necessarily need the taxable event for that to be funny. I like using the word taxable event.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I was saying that. It was making me laugh yesterday that, so I have this joke where I say that, like gay guys have the most sex, lesbians have the least sex, or straight people have the second most, then lesbians have the least sex at 0 because you need a penis for sex. And I was saying that, like, when two lesbians have sex, there's no taxable event. So taxable event is like the government can't take money from you unless there's an event. Like if you have stocks, like you have to sell it to, if you just own the stocks, the government can't get their money. But once you sell it, there's like a taxable event and now they can take their money.
That's good to know. I just got into stocks like everybody else did when the market crashed. So I haven't sold any yet, but I'm glad I have.
Nice. Yeah, I was saying like you need a dick like to have a taxable event for sex. I don't know.
It's true. What they're doing, it's just creating friction. There's no fucking going on there.
Do you know what the other thing is? There's something about like you guys, and I feel like hopefully I have this too with certain people, because a lot of times I'll see people that you watch for the first time and you're like, whoa, what the hell is this? And then you kind of see like, oh, it took them forever to get there, or like develop that thing, which just seems so weird at the time. Maybe I'm explaining this bad, but there's something about, even when you're talking about being like conservative the way that you are now, because you know the way society moved and the way you're in opposition to it, it feels like there's also like just like a aggressive masculinity to like what you guys are doing, where you just fucking, it's like there's so much like raw like testosterone where you're just like going and like fucking around and just like so unapologetic. Do you like find that?
Yeah, it's part of the whole pissing off society right now, because you have to treat women like they are on some sort of holy shrine. Yeah, that's the people thing that's really pissing me off. But it's part of the whole rebelling against what you're supposed to do right now, according to universities and according to big tech. We call chicks gash. I guess that's about the extent of it. Basically, we just call chicks gash. But
it's not even it's not even about women. It's just like this energy of like there's this. I think it's that like we're just gonna act the way that like a group of guys hang out. Do you know who Dax Shepard is? So he's this huge podcaster, right? He's like the biggest, probably like the, after like Joe Rogan, like second or third biggest podcast. And I listened to him on an interview, and I kind of, I get why he's like a talented broadcaster, but everything with him is it's always like, how did he come to terms with his, demons? And he used to be a drug addict, and now he's, looking inside himself, and what does make me happy? And it's like a lot of that kind of talk, right?
Okay.
What does Dax need? Like, what should I, and he's, whenever he talks to people, and I'm always like, oh, who gives a shit? And then I heard him talking. He's like, he was discussing his ads and stuff like that. And he was like, well, I know a lot of people come on here because we sell a lot of books because our audience is 90% female. And I was like, of course it is.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I was like, because in my mind, I was like, why is this guy so big? Like, who would want to listen to this? And it was like, girls, that's fucking who. You know, it's all about them. And I feel like, you know what I mean? So it's all like, even guys, it's like all the energy is just fucking for chicks right now. So I think that's.
Yeah. And it's actually surprising. My statistics on YouTube say that 1% of my audience is female, but there are
the 1%.
A lot of chicks, a lot of fucking chicks, and some of them are even like hot ass chicks are into the channel. They're drawn to that masculine energy too.
Of course, like they were with bands.
Like my
it's
girlfriend.
It's not pandering to them. It's the same with every band. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's like every band. It was like it's like girls like the bands that the guys liked. And then if the girls like them first, the guys don't want anything to do with it. It's like, it's not content for girls. Girls just fucking, you know, they like the masculine energy. But sorry about your girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend and her friends, it's actually, maybe people will find this repulsive, but my girlfriend's 21. She's in college still. And I'm a classy guy, but they have these mandatory programs they have to watch now on like white privilege and socioeconomic disadvantage that they all must watch before they register for classes. And her and all of her friends are just, they hate this. They watch it on mute and just collectively talk shit about having to do this. So that audience, like enlightened, not shitty, not pussified people exist in both genders. But yeah, I think that what we do, just the being guys talking shit and talking about getting pussy and getting fucked up. I guess that's part of it. And that comes from like the Stern vibe from the early 90s too, that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. You've got some fucking crazy characters. So you have like, the one thing you had that kind of like reminded me of like Stern for some reason is you had that dude ASAP Fatty. Is that guy's name? Yeah. He was coming on your show.
Airsoft Fatty.
Okay. So this guy was coming on Danny's show. And like before he was on, this is when I was listening to your podcast. You're like, this guy's a fat fuck. He's gonna die. And then apparently he called in and he was like, I don't want to come in anymore because you've been making fun of me for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I said at some point that if you cross the threshold of 400 pounds, you should have to drive by yourself in a car to Montana with a puff adder on the dashboard. That should be the way in which a fat person has to commit suicide once they get to 400. And I think that scared him a little bit. I don't think he was eager to come into that sort of environment. But he came around the next week and he's 69, our producer. We got him to sit on our producer's face, which was a lot of fun. And he loved it. He had a great time. He
seems like a funny dude.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy, he that's one thing I don't really like to do is he got popular because this dude iDubbbz, who's a giant YouTuber who got huge through a content cop series where he would basically talk shit about all the top YouTubers' content. iDubbbz did a documentary on this big fat guy, and the big fat guy blew up.
Oh, he basically said he sucks, and then like people were like, no, he doesn't.
No. He actually went out to his house and he shot a really high budget documentary. It was sweet. It was awesome. And this guy is just like a fat redneck who lives in Michigan. But I take pride in not being one of these collaboration dudes. They're like, oh, this hot social media person's in LA. We got to shoot a video together.
Right.
Like we found this dude at a comedy show named, I gave him the name Rat Dick Ralph. And he was a mushroom and LSD addict who got fired from work, from various workplaces every single week. And we made him, Ryan, shave his head and get a tattoo up there. And he eventually lost his mind and beat the shit out of his girlfriend. But what I'm saying is it's important to cultivate your own character.
You're saying this guy rules, is what you're saying.
This guy fucking rules.
We Coors Light, fucking Stone Cold style.
Yeah, dude.
Black eye for the girlfriend, boys.
Yeah, but like it becomes this thing in LA where it's like high school and it's like, oh, are you collaborating with them? Oh, there's a little drama between these two cliques. It's like, fuck that. I just want to find psychos and put them on camera.
Yeah, all of that stuff's a little bit of a replacement for actually like making good things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes back to that lemming philosophy that we were talking about. Everybody's going one way politically. Everybody's going one way content-wise. These people don't want to think for themselves. They just... If somebody else did a video with this guy, he must be cool, right? No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I know. I used to love when I was younger, like in the band days, I had this like crazy clique that there's this guy, Gary, and he was like 50 years old. And he used to just come to shows, and then eventually we're like, yo, want to come on tour with us? And so he's like, I'll be your bus driver. And he showed up, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I don't have my license. We're like, all right, I guess you can sell t-shirts. But he had this son, and I remember like the funniest thing that sticks out, but how crazy this guy was. I remember he was there with his son, who he brought on tour with us once too. And his son was like 16. And he was like, Dad, can I have money for food? And he was like, you don't have any money. And he was like, Dad, you just bought a 2-4 of beer. And he goes, you know, beer doesn't count. Like, this is the kind of guy. And then he was just always
perfect.
Yeah, just an insane person. We did the same thing, like got him to get tattoos. And like now thinking back, like he was having sex with 20-year-old girls. We're like, yeah, that was kind of a lot. But it was like, yeah, you create your own fucking like world, and you don't really need other people in it, you know? Or at least you kind of, once in a while you see someone that you like. Like I saw you, there's a few other people. There's this kid, Aiden, that I put in a bunch of my videos. He does 1-minute talk show that like, I just watched his things and I was like, okay, this guy's good. And there's some comedians in New York, but it's like, it's not about collaborating once. It's more like, oh, I actually kind of fucking like what this guy's doing, you know? And you sort of actually build like some real relationships. But
where in New York are you guys?
I'm in the East Village.
So you're right in the city.
Yeah.
How is it right now? I know generally it's probably pretty desolate and there's a lot of shit boarded up. Do you see it turning around? Do you like it? Are you planning on fleeing yourself?
Well, I've only been here. I was here for 5 months because I only moved here from Canada a year ago.
Okay.
So I've only been here for 5 months, and then all this stuff happened. So I don't really know. I don't really have like the plan. Like the thing is, New York is still going to be the best place in the world for stand-up. Like a lot of people, I've been in Austin a few times, like, and everyone's like, there is like, this is the new spot, but it's like, it won't be for stand-up. Like New York's the only place that has like, 15 showcase clubs where you could like do 3-4 spots a night. And I still want like 4 or 5 years of that.
It's grittier than LA too. I feel like LA has this pussified corporate vibe where people are just trying to get gigs as writers on sitcoms. Yeah. And to get into that, you need to be basically a big Democrat, and that makes its way into their material and their attitude.
No, it 100% is. You gotta be. It is cool, like when people are just like, because all of the people, like you said, that are trying to, toe that line and do talk about the things that most of those people, it doesn't work out for, especially if you're just like, if you don't have a hook, if you're just like some fucking like white dude that's doing comedy and you're like, oh, and again, if you're not that person, then like, yeah, that sucks. Like, I guess maybe don't be a comedian right now. If you don't feel like, like to make an omelet, you need to break a few eggs sort of situation,
totally. Yeah. And I was watching Dom Irera's Full Frontal Comedy recently, which was a late 90s, I believe, comedy showcase that featured a bunch of comedians that are big now. But more than that, it featured a bunch of comedians that were never heard from again and didn't go anywhere. And you see these people performing and you realize, oh, this material they're spouting out could be told by absolutely anybody. There's no point of view. There's no balls. And a lot of people say that was the turning point in Louis C.K.'s career, is when he stepped away from that style of generic observational comedy into, I hate my kids. Marriage is miserable. I'm a fat, disgusting tub of lard. That became his material, and that's when he took off, because it's fucking dangerous. Your family could desert you when you start saying shit like that. And it's the same with the kind of comedy we do. We could get kicked off YouTube. Everybody that we went to school with could fucking ostracize us and everybody on our social media. But I think you and I realized that there's really no other way but to do what we would like to do and the kind of material we want.
If you don't follow what you think is funny, you know what I mean? That's why it's like, I even have with the industry, like I do all these sketches, and those are probably like the biggest thing. And I get so many, anytime I'm talking to people in the industry or whatever, it's always like, so why are you doing all these like street interviews, like this kind of like lowbrow shit? Yeah. When you have this thing, it's like, it seems, and like a lot of people say that to me, and I'm like, because I think it's really funny, and the people who like me think it's funny, and you don't get that. That's what I've been saying this with the like, because most places are left wing, but then there'll be the other places that are kind of reaching out to me that are like right wing, and they're like, oh, we're free speech, and it's like, well, you're not. You're partisan on the other side. It's like, you need a network that goes the way that like hip hop used to be, or whatever, like where they go, I don't know what this guy is doing, but the kids seem to like it. Like that's what a fucking executive should be doing. Like sensing the energy of like, this guy's got a thing going on. Yeah. I watched it and it was like special, not, we'll decide our things, by partisan politics. So I think, I don't know, what do you think that the industry needs to change? Or do you think that the industry is like kind of screwed and there's people like you that you're like, why would I ever get involved with any of that?
And are you talking about the mainstream industry?
Yeah, like
getting legitimate writing gigs for networks and shit?
I think you're above writing gigs. I mean, in my opinion, like, you're doing millions and millions of views. You've got this huge fan base. Like, I don't see why you'd ever want to leave that to go be a fucking writer on something.
Totally.
But, like, agree. Why wouldn't you have a television show or a net, whatever that may be? Like, does that, what do you think that world, you're just like, why? What I'm doing is better? Or do you think that they could get their act together and maybe you'd be interested?
From a strictly economic standpoint, I would never want to go do a Netflix show or go work for some cable network because I've seen how much fucking money Nelk and Danny Duncan make.
Those guys
I think Danny Duncan makes. I think he makes $1 million a month. No exaggeration. Off his merchandise, $1 million a month with total autonomy over what he's putting out. So I don't see any reason to stray from YouTube after that. But I actually. And I sensed a little bit earlier in your question that this is what you were getting at. I actually think the state of the industry is not as bad as people make it out to be. Like, I think YouTube is an incredibly fair platform.
It's very fair, other than the fact that they can disintegrate you, but like
they can. Like the Alex Jones thing was fucking terrible. I absolutely hated that. But that seemed to be like, who fucking knows who was pulling the strings on that? That was like fucking one of the Vanderbilts or fucking one of the Rockefellers that was faceless and like 98 years old and trying to establish a one world government and doesn't want Jones blowing the whistle. But other than that, I mean, they let Steven Crowder fucking stay on. I've had one video.
Well, he's actually not saying anything that crazy. They just kind of pretend like he's really saying. They're just saying like the conservative, kind of talk. Like,
what about Nick DiPaolo? Nick DiPaolo is pretty good. Like Nick DiPaolo.
Well, they got rid of him. He got kicked off of YouTube. Yeah, you're right.
Nick DiPaolo did.
Yeah, I think he got back on, but he got like 3 hate speech strikes and he got kicked. Like, you're right. Nick DiPaolo is constantly dealing with this.
Dude, Nick DiPaolo's gnarly, and he's one of my favorite comedians. But I got to check this out.
He's like your quintessential like New York like Trump guy.
He's fucking great. But I've only had one video removed, and it was for bodily fluids. And in retrospect, I don't know what I was thinking, being able to put it up on YouTube, or I don't know why I thought it wouldn't get taken down. But I mean, it was one of our buddies licking up vomit. There was blood everywhere. It was just a complete fluid orgy. That's all I've gotten taken down. And like we said earlier, I've done some gnarly stuff, picking up girls with Me Too accusations. Nick DiPaolo show blocked on YouTube for 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks is probably his second strike, right?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact. My point is, it's like, that stuff gets in your, the same way that you're talking about, like trying to listen to the industry gets in your head, or listening to like the people that don't like or do like your stuff gets in your head. It kind of can get in your head, that stuff too. So yeah, I mean,
I hate saying stuff like this. Like, it does fuck me up, and I'm like, oh god, they're going after DiPaolo. And then I start reviewing my catalog in my head, like, oh, where have I gone too far? Do I need to start changing up my stuff? Because obviously, if you and I got kicked off YouTube, that'd be fucking devastating. We don't want that.
Yeah, we're
ballsy, but we're not that ballsy.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of, and when I was doing, I started like and a lot of me is like, I'm surprised they haven't, but I haven't got hate speech strikes and stuff like that on my podcast. So
yeah, I think it should be pretty clear that we're not like fucking anti-Semites or giant white supremacists or something. Like
I am.
Nice, but both things. Wow. Yeah.
No, I was saying this the other day. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, these white dudes are sexist, homophobic, and racist. And I'm like, no, I'm just sexist.
Well, I'm homophobic, so I think we've got all four corners covered now. Yeah, man, it's I don't think that there's any risk of us getting kicked off YouTube. And like the Nick DiPaolo, I love.
Well,
Nick
the one
DiPaolo,
thing is that's the one thing about like you know, again, like you said, you got some cash now, so you can get lawyers and deal with it. So like there is a point where you're like a little better positioned. But hey, can I do like questions, and I do everyone. Can you want to answer this question with me?
Let's do it.
Boys question. I thought this is a pretty good one. I feel like Danny would have a good synopsis in this. Okay, so this guy, he's 18 years old. The chick's 18, and he says, bro, I need help. I'm dating a girl who I'm not into anymore, and I want to end it without her fucking killing herself or whatever, something like that. What's the best way to do it? Do you have any advice?
Ooh. First of all, she's 18 years old. She's going to be fine. It's one thing to string along a girl for 7 years into her mid-30s and then cut her off when her eggs are starting to go bad. That's a scary thought, huh? That chicks need to choose wisely once they start getting to baby bearing age. An 18-year-old dude, it's completely fine. In your own little universe of your mind, I know it seems like life or death, you breaking up with this girl, but be mature, tell her pussy stinks, and get the fuck out of town.
Okay, so let's say, I couldn't agree more that that's the move. It's like, obviously, just break up with this chick, who cares? But then when you're in logistics, you're like, I've literally been in scenarios where I was dating a girl, and because maybe I'm a pussy, but twice in my life I've moved to a new city as a to break up with a chick. Dude, I've moved to LA and I moved to New York, but 2 times I've moved instead of breaking up, like held it out till there, and you're like, I'm moving, just because it's so hard. So I was
And I have the same thing totally with work too. I was always afraid to put in my 2 weeks notice, which is the correct thing to do. I would just not show up and block all the photos of everybody.
It's very hard.
It's tough to look somebody in the eye and tell them you're through. I've never dumped a girl. I've only been dumped horribly, heartbreakingly twice.
What for? What would you get dumped for? Like cheating or shit like that, or just because you stink?
When you fall hard for the first time, and especially when the girl might be a little bit out of your league, which my first girlfriend was. She was a gorgeous Jewish girl, like incredible shape, tan skin, freshman at UCLA when I was at UCLA, and I couldn't think about anything else other than her. I would send her a text message and then wait.
Really? You wouldn't strike me as that guy.
I was absolutely that guy. I don't know if I trust a guy who's never been had the shit beat out of him and B, been dumped horribly.
Right.
But man. And then that's just suffocating attention is repellent to everybody. And it was eventually to her, and she broke up with me, and she was all I could think of for 4, 5, 6 months. I think like a year after she dumped me. And then the other girl told me she fucked the dude with a giant cock in her past. And I had
a big 6.5-inch penis.
Dude, she told me, she was like, yeah, I met this black dude in France, and he made me dinner and we had sex. And it was a couple months before her and I started dating. And I've got a very unimpressive or average penis. And I couldn't get over that. I just had this downward
Why would she mention the cock
self-esteem spiral? We were both coked out, and I committed the cardinal sin of prying. Yeah. I've committed 2 cardinal sins: leaving my face in a dick picture and asking about the dick size of a girl's ex-lover. Don't do it, kids. Don't do it, 18-year-old kid who asked this question. But yeah, I guess you and I are both not the guys to ask this. How do I let a girl down?
No, but I think so. I think I do have like somewhat of an answer, because this is what I like, the actual logistics of it. You want to get it to the point where the hard part is to just mention it the first time, right? So you want to essentially, whatever you normally fight about, like if you're drinking or whatever, get in that big fight, like when you're drinking, and then mention that like maybe we shouldn't be together or whatever. So get that into the air. I think you need to get the idea that you potentially might be breaking up into the air a couple times, and then you transfer these over to text messages, especially if you're 18, because you probably talk on text message mostly. So once you get the attitude of like, we might be breaking up, then now that you're on text, you'd be like, then you can craft your things of being like, listen, I honestly, I'm thinking about it, and then never make it about them, make it about you. So you go, I just don't think that like I'm ready for this, and like honestly you're perfect, and maybe in like 5 years, but I really like can't do this, I need to figure some shit out. Act like you're tormented, like I'm just like such a mess right now and I can't bring that on you, you know. Never make it about her. So I think
I like how you, Ryan, leaned into your cowardice. You're like, well, basically you need to create a fake fight, and then you need to dovetail off that. And what I was going to do was like, oh, you need to be noble, and you need to tell her to over a cup of tea at noon. You need no. I think maybe we could find
the people that listen to BOYSCAST are cool guys, but we're all cowards.
Absolutely. And I love how you were honest about it. And I think too, there might be opportunity right now, depending on if these are college lovers, if they're from different cities. Holidays are coming up, which could mean prolonged absence from each other. And I can't think of an easier way to do it than after having not seen her for 3 weeks, because you and I both know, like, once you see the girl again and you fuck and then you go out and get lunch together, you're not going to have the balls to tell her it's done. Like,
no. But if you do, that's the other thing. If like, did you want, because this girl's only 18, you might want to leave it open for a couple more smashes in the future. So you want to end on like, you want to end on somewhat good terms.
Yeah, I break up with her and then DM me on Instagram her phone number, because
and then have Danny take care of her. Girl chicks like Danny.
Yeah, but I do think hopefully they're college students, and then he can use that absence for winter break.
That's great advice also.
to slow down the pace of communication to like once every other day, then once every 4 days.
Now we're talking,
and then it's going to be a lot easier just to cut the cord.
Or you go with I'm gay. Like, these are also legitimate options.
These are all brave, mature ways to end a relationship.
There was like, do you think It also, there's another part where it's funny because he's like, this girl's gonna kill herself, and I've been that guy too, and I'm just like, this girl couldn't handle breaking up with me, and it's just we're such fucking like egomaniacs sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't break up with this girl, so end it, dude. No one can get broken up by me. Like, their life would be over without me. And you're like, she's fucking 18. It'll be nothing. It'll be a glip in her thing,
Totally, man. I so feel for this guy. Like, my girl and I got into a fight in July because for a video, I thought it was a comedy bit. I made out with a girl who, one of our fans who had like spina bifida and had a cane and shit, he made out with a chick at a party who was super hot. And I thought it'd be funny if we both made out with her.
You have so many videos that's you making out with chicks.
Yeah,
you cracked the system on how to cheat for sure.
No,
You're like,
exactly.
YouTube video, Danny fucks 9 college girls like on different nights, no cameras.
I did fuck a hooker in one of my videos, but she was repulsive, so it wasn't as big of a deal.
Were you with your chick at the time?
No, I wasn't. But she still knows about that video and wasn't repelled. But her and I did have a talk about making out with chicks, and it's okay, my girlfriend said, if the girl is a 6 or down. Well, this girl was supposedly not a 6 or down. So we were fighting, and there was some distance between us because I was filming in a remote location. And what you said, Ryan, is totally true, that once there's already conflict, it becomes so much easier to terminate the relationship.
Right?
So I guess what we're saying is create a false conflict.
But it can't be.
Don't talk to her very often. And geographical separation. If you have an aunt who lives in Vail, Colorado, go visit her for winter.
Yeah, see, this is why, this is why you're good at videos, right? It's like precision. I'm not here to give you the girl version, the Dax, Shepherd, where it's like, honestly, you need to look inside yourself, and if you're not right for each other, it's like, no.
Yeah.
We need a plan, we need execution to get out of this relationship.
Yeah, I thought my girlfriend and I were going to break up during that fight, and so, your theory's spot on. I think my theory has some substance to it, too. I think we combine those. Fight, you know what? And distance.
Fight and distance. You know what? Actually, I had one more point about the Dax Shepherd thing, even though since I just brought it up again.
I'm gonna look this fuck up. Yeah.
The other thing that I was kind of thinking about this, and I wanted you to weigh in on it, is with a lot of those kind of guys, especially ones that seem more feminine, or girls that give girls advice. A lot of the advice is like how to get in touch with yourself, or how to heal things that are wrong with you, or become a better person. But I feel like with men, it's like, no. Figure out how to get what the fuck you want, and then figure out that stuff after. Because you know what I mean? It's like, that's more of a 40 thing. It's like, and the truth is, you actually might sometimes become a worse person, or you might actually, it's the COVID thing, right? It's like the players that are the best are the players that can play with an injury, not the players that spend, all their time fixing the injury sometimes, right? So I think that a lot of times it's like, you're better off forgetting all that fucking mushy bullshit and figuring out who you are as a human. Obviously that comes natural, but I think it's better to focus on how to get the life you want, how to get, put yourself set up financially, and then you have the whole rest of your life to, figure out how to have a good relationship and how to,
Totally, man. Self-esteem partially comes from within, and I've had to learn a lot of that this year. I've had to read a lot of books and figure out how to run my head to deal with the amount of pressure I'm under. But then again, you can do all the soul searching and introspection you want, but if you still work as a fry cook at Denny's and you drive a 1992 Honda Civic, there's a physical exterior reason why you have low self-esteem. And for me, Dr. Drew said this once. We'll come back to the example that's popped up a couple times here, penis size. Dr. Drew said that oftentimes men who are in their 20s and haven't accomplished anything real, their penis becomes an antenna for their insecurities, and all of their insecurities that are really about their shitty relationship, the fact that they live with their parents, that they have a job where they're getting paid $8.32 an hour. All of those insecurities manifest in penis fear. Whereas if once they start solving these problems that have to do with their life, all the insecurity, penis related and otherwise, starts to clear up. And for me, that's totally been the case. Since I become a YouTuber and I've turned my passions into an income versus being a busboy, which was my day job before I started being a YouTuber, my sense of self-worth and my ability to go out in public and hang out with my friends and family and hold my head up high is completely changed.
Yeah, and then you can nurture all that other bullshit afterwards, which you probably are. I bet you become a better person as a result of that.
Totally, man. And it's like, as a YouTuber, I've had to learn how to be a CEO. I didn't learn how to fucking do that when I was...
Well, you're mad efficient. I mean, even yesterday, like you said you work 6 days a week. So we were going to do this yesterday, and then you were like, listen, like I got to take the day off because things just got like way too crazy. Is that your system, sort of like work yourself to the bone and then take like a day off, like where you completely clear everything, as opposed to, I think, I mean, to me, that is like a way to do it. But at the end of the day, all that stuff looks messy, but you get your video up on time every fucking week, right?
Sometimes. This week it might come up on Saturday, actually. Sorry to disappoint everybody. but yeah, man, it's, if you put in, who was it? It was one of the great fucking generals, like Eisenhower, MacArthur, said, if a man does his best, what else is there? I think if a man does his best, what else is there? If a man is a good person, what else is there? I do my best every week, and that includes a day of rest. I used to try to do the 7 days a week nonstop thing, and that is actually not doing your best because you can't be your most productive self when you're not giving yourself any time to recover. I do that, and I try to be a good guy, and if the video comes up late, or if I'm overwhelmed, or if I need to take a random Tuesday off, so be it. I'm doing my best, and I'm trying to be a good person.
So what's your like, Dan, on what's your like efficiency? Do you have any like number one efficiency tips for people? Like that you live by? Because it sounds like you read books and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, do you have anything that becomes like a mantra where you're like, this is one of the few? I'll give you an example of one for me.
Yeah.
That I was just talking about this. When you're organizing your days, like it's one thing if you're like, okay, I have a day where I'm going to do like 10 things and they're just odds and ends. But most days have like one sole task you're going to get done, or at the very most two if you're splitting your day in half. Because mostly if you say you're going to get 6 things done, you're going to get 0 things done. So if it's, hey, I'm editing this, or today I'm doing a bunch of press, or today I'm writing this script, whatever it is, if you have more than 2 things that you're going to get done, you probably just end up getting a bunch of things done crappily.
Yeah. That's another thing too, man. I need to learn how to delegate better, because right now there are definitely more than 2 things I'm doing, but I would say there are 2 primary things. It usually comes down to comedy preparation, which is studying comedy and writing comedy, and then editing. And then there are other things, like there'll be a podcast here, or there'll be sorting out some Instagram clips to post, or to do some merchandise stuff, talk to an artist, talk to my supplier guy. I think that's good advice. I will just add, on top of some of the more cliched ones, like wake up early, make your bed, which I think absolutely do work.
JP,
be great.
Local drug addict Jordan Peterson. People get so mad, dude. I've said that a couple times in the podcast, and then people fucking go crazy when you talk shit about Jordan Peterson.
Here's 12 rules for life right here.
I like Jordan Peterson, but I always think it's funny. But it's just funny that, like, he, whatever. I know everyone's correcting me already, but because he had the addiction to the painkillers or whatever the thing, I don't know what the story is. And then he went to these doctors and he has this thing, and it was just funny to me that, like, everyone's hero is like, say he's a drug addict. Always makes me laugh so much.
I mean, who fucking knows though? He might have taken like a half a bottle of prescribed Valium and freaked out and thought he was an addict and went in and turned himself in preemptively.
Well, for me, I just don't have any tolerance for that stuff in my normal life. Like if I have a friend that's like going through like, he's had to take a year off because, he's really going through this addiction to pain. I go, or whatever.
Yeah, but I tend to be the same way you are, man. I tend to not really tolerate excuses in myself or in others. The guy
run himself dry. The guy ran himself to the bone. You know what I mean? That, in my opinion, that's what happened with Jordan Peterson. He fucking, for 3 years straight, he ran himself to the fucking ground. Yeah,
and a lot of people hated him too, man. It's not easy being a controversial person like you or I. It's just not easy. It's not easy being on top or being successful has a lot of great things about it, but it's got a lot of negatives associated with it.
It's very stressful.
Oh, it's absolutely. And I'll say a way that I've cured that stress that's been huge for me is being grateful. I've read enough now that you tend to see lessons repeated over and over in history, whether they be from Stoics or in the Bible or more modern guys like Jordan Peterson or Tony Robbins. Yeah. There seems to be this reoccurring theme of gratitude. And so I do, in the morning after I make my coffee, think of 5 things I'm grateful for. And if I'm stressed out and I'm having a hard time getting to bed, I write down physically 5 things I'm grateful for before I go to bed, because there are a lot of massive conveniences in your life right now, or if you just take the time to look around and appreciate them, your heart rate will go down.
It changes your body chemistry. Yeah.
Totally, man. And you and I are driven guys. We're always thinking about what the next investment's going to be, the next chunk of money that's going to hit our bank account and what we're going to do with it. But right now, if you look around, like, I've got fucking shelter, I've got running water, I've got a refrigerator full of food. I'm fucking fine, dude. I have family and friends who love me.
6-inch piece.
I got a 6-inch cock, and it's not that thin.
Very thin. It's like a blade of grass.
Pretty thin, but it's not that. It could be worse.
Yeah, that's great, dude. I like, I do know what you mean. And it's like even just a way of changing things in your brain. Like when you think of things, like I said this in a different podcast, but it's like, oh, you have to do this. And you'd be like, no, I get to do this, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I have this, all these things. You go, look at 3 years ago, all of those, there's a bunch of stuff that I would have wanted, and those are in place now. So that's, you know, some of these things that you work, and you go, and I said, like, it does get corny when you get on these topics, but I was like, someone was like, well, you know, what if you don't see improvements?
Dak Shepard territory.
Yeah, and you go, but it's the difference because you're talking about actual things as opposed to yourself. But
yeah,
it's like you can still be bad, but be better than you were a month ago.
Yeah.
So it's like looking at like the improvement versus the like the actual what do you call it?
Yeah.
The improvement versus the absolute.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Or comparing yourself to other people like Nelk or
Yeah.
Danny Duncan who make $1 million a month. It's easy to compare yourself to them or people.
There's always someone bigger.
Absolutely. Or there's always somebody who you think in the moment is funnier than you. You can fucking have a podcast guest on who kills and you're like, God damn it, this guy's making me look kind of bad. Or you can go to a comedy show when a guy's material is just stellar and then you're like, fuck, I'm nothing compared to this guy. And you can't do that, dude. Like, I mean, I was watching fucking football Monday night. Tom Brady looked like fucking garbage, but he's still Tom Brady.
Yeah.
He's probably going to come out next week and have a killer game. He's still the greatest of all time. Everybody has bad days. It just, you got to be grateful for what you have, I think.
And detach yourself with it like that. Even when you're talking about someone like Tom Brady, it's like you get, sometimes you get so much fucking like people like hating or yelling at you or whatever. And then you kind of, you take it so personally, but if you look at, like football players, it's the same thing. And you go, whatever, like you wouldn't think of them like, oh, that must be hard. But they all deal with that. But I think the reason why it's a little different now is because when I get hate, I actually am not thinking like, oh, I'm mad that these people hate me or whatever. I'm thinking like, oh, fuck, am I getting canceled? I'm more like, this is like a legitimate like threat that needs to be neutralized.
Yeah.
So you actually
I don't think we're big enough to be canceled. I don't.
Dude, I know some in the comedy community. I know 10 like open mic comedians that are like ostracized from Toronto because of like nothing. So
But,
I know people get fired from their job at fucking Kinko's because of
you and I, as long as we don't get kicked off YouTube, which again I don't think is going to happen. Like you always have this forum to make
and your
a
Patreon
living
and stuff. You're right.
Yeah,
that's why you're doing it right.
Well, Patreon is even worse than YouTube as far as censorship. So that's not necessarily always something we can count on. I have thought, like, if I got kicked off Patreon, I would just have to focus on merch a lot more. But yeah, even if you got kicked out of the local comedy scene, like, fuck them. What are they? They're performing to a room of 30 people.
But if you're a stand-up, like, you can't do stand-up anymore.
Yeah, dude, I think...
It's like being a scientist, and they're like, you're banned from every lab in New York. Okay.
I mean, why do you want to do stand-up? Do you want to do it just for the artistic pursuit? Do you want to do it for financial reasons? Because I'm more and more starting to see stand-up as obsolete as a career path.
Yeah, I mean, stand-up, I don't think is the career path. That's not how I look at it. Stand-up is the business card. So to me, stand-up is it's the whole thing. So all of this, if you think of my orbit or whatever, like my life is a little solar system or whatever you want to think of it, stand-up's the centerpiece, right? That's you, like raw. That's like your opinions, and not everyone's like that. I mean, there was a time in my life where that centerpiece was music, and then I was like doing shows around that. But it depends on like but for me, that's like the purest one. That's kind of like the only one that doesn't involve any other components, and it's just like, here's my hour of, and it's the only objective art form too, right? So me and you could look at our videos and we could say, oh, maybe this one's better. You maybe can look at views. You can maybe take opinions. Stand-up's like with the only art form that's like sports where it's actually there's an objective component where two people go back to back. So someone could be like, oh, this guy's bigger, he's better. It's like, oh, well, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's go in crowd 20 minutes and do it back to back. Let's see. So to me, that's the 100-meter dash, even if you're an NFL player.
Chris D'Elia has put up multiple Netflix specials that are unwatchable, and he was still the biggest comedian in the world until he got Me Too.
Again, though, and that's, listen, I'm not like some Chris D'Elia apologist, and I mean for his comedy, not for the other stuff, but like, if you talk about him specifically, that is perfect. It's like so much people will go, Chris D'Elia is the worst, they hate it or whatever. Okay, right.
He's a great podcaster. He is a great podcaster.
Yeah, but let's just stick with the stand-up, and people go, okay, this guy's not good at stand-up, but he is though. You might not like it, but like he objectively is. And even the things people say, they go, oh, he doesn't even tell jokes, and you go, okay, well, you go kill for an hour without telling jokes, as you say. That even makes it even harder. Again, I don't really like it. It's just like there is an objectivity to this. It's like a basketball player that like scored 20 baskets, and you're like, or however many is a lot of baskets, and you're like, this guy sucks, and you're like, he doesn't though. So Chris D'Elia, again, I don't like. This isn't it's for chicks, it's for whatever. But if you put him in a room, he murders.
I went out to New York. We did a comedy show in New York last year, and we sold it out.
I saw you. I completely sold
it. People went fucking nuts. People were so psyched to see me, and I went up there and I did my fucking material. I was hammered drunk. It went okay, and a lot of people would say objectively, I'm a good stand-up comedian if the only metric is putting butts in seats and getting laughs. But I know I'm a terrible stand-up comedian.
Well, I mean, just because you haven't done it that much. Like, you obviously are a funny dude. Like, every person that I know that's hilarious eventually was good at stand-up. There's lots of, there's lots of in between, but it's like, it really was, when I started stand-up, the three guys that I know that were like the three funniest people in the scene, like by a long shot, lo and behold, 10 years later, those are the three best stand-ups.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, stand up for me. I was like you, and I'm not saying like, oh, I've grown beyond this feeble mindset. But
I get it. Stand up's fucking stupid. It's a stupid life. It's a crappy art form, but like, it just is what it is.
Yeah, I used to get the feeling that was the thing that I needed to focus on, and everything else was just a way to arrive at the end of touring and going and selling out theaters. But then I started to realize that like there are a lot of people who have done comedy very, very well over the past 50 years. And a lot of times I listen to like a Greg Giraldo or to a Nick DiPaolo, and I'm like, that guy just said like half the shit I think about and wish I could write good material about. It's been done. Whereas YouTube is a new frontier. There are shows that have been similar to mine on network television or on cable, but they had a bunch of corporate advertisers behind them. They had a star who was probably a stand-up comedian himself and didn't really want to be there and wasn't too invested. YouTube is this place where I can be solely focused on this and put in 6 days a week to make it unique and creative comedy forms. Yeah. So I've started to see it, to me, as a more valuable path for me personally.
It's a 100%. I mean, and even on more important than that, your formative years were spent there, right? So it's like there is this other element of like a lot of people, if your formative years are spent at stand-up, like that is kind of how you like interface with comedy in the world. Like even how I do my videos, like it all kind of stems from like how I like interface with energy and find out what you can say on stage, where that's not how you developed how to do that. So I think for you, it is true. It's like for you to switch now and be like, oh, I'll be like a stand-up. It's like you'll be at like a disadvantage even because you just didn't you're obviously like a fully formed human with like a perspective and an infrastructure, and so I think that you'd have to break that down and build it up again to start stand up at like where you're at in your career. So I think it just depends on like who the person is and what their life's like.
Yeah, stand up, you got to do a lot of nasty introspection too. I feel like in some way I'd be less happy if I started letting in all the dark thoughts. Like I read a lot of fucking literature, like William Faulkner or Ernest Hemingway. Those guys were just miserable, sad sacks of shit. And you sort of have to be that way.
Sad artists.
It's bad, dude.
New York's the ultimate sad boy town too.
Totally, man. It's lame. And then for stand-up, I feel like I'd have to get into that a little bit more. I'd have to start going out more and having more human interactions, where now I can just do everything from behind my desk, just happy as shit. And so maybe it's that psychological out too, that I don't have to be like a sad, introspective guy to do this.
I agree, dude. No, I think you're fucking killing it. So I wouldn't, if it was all like, if I was doing it again and I was starting now, I don't think I would, but that's just, it's not going to like rewrite what the situation is.
And
But yeah,
for me, totally. Also, I take my primary influence is stand up. I was listening to this morning, Doug Stanhope, like a Doug Stanhope album from 2009. Like that's
yeah.
during the day, like that's what's always going through my head or what I'm pumping into my brain is just stand up. So I totally respect the art form. I think the best comedians are in stand up. I just, for me personally, don't want to get into
Some of them,
it.
like I don't think any, like you want to take Fred Armisen or Mike Myers, like it doesn't matter, right? It's like they're just whatever you choose. There's lots of fucking talented people doing all. Yeah, so there's no right or wrong answer. And you already like are fucking running a little empire. So like, how would you step away from that and spend 30 hours a week on fucking? It just doesn't make sense.
It's so much hard work. I mean, you know as well as anybody that to become competent at stand-up, it's not the same. Like an example is Adam Carolla, who I think is one of the most gifted, angelic comedians that exists. His ability to just talk into a microphone and make it as hilarious as any stand-up's act is incredible to me. But when he does real stand-up, there's something off. It doesn't work because he doesn't have the hours logged. And that's a great example of how singular your pursuit of stand-up must be to be great.
Yeah, even and it's I think Patton Oswalt said this, but it's like everyone who becomes great at stand-up kind of needed like at least 7 years where that's the only thing they thought about. And it's true, but it's really hard to, even now it's like I kind of I wouldn't be able to, like now I'm at this place where I'm like fully formed as a comedian and a video maker and all that stuff. It's like, I mean, you say you read a lot and stuff, but when you're learning how to do something new, do you have time to like really step aside from what you're doing and, spend 3 months or a year, like really, it's like you're 30 now. It's like the 20s was the time to develop your like skills. It's like once you're 30, you're kind of to some degree like, all right, these are the skills. Like, get to work and use what you have, and then maybe 40 you step back if you've got money, maybe you take 2 years, whatever it is. But I think in terms of like how to design your life, I think once you get 30 it's like you can't afford like four new years of like, oh, let's start it's like kind of like, no, this is the time to use what you like built in yourself and your skill set in your life to like try to do something great with it now, right?
Totally, man. You should have hopefully identified something in your youth that you were really good at or that you had some sort of proclivity for. And you should have developed that hopefully in your 20s. And once you're at 30, it becomes hard to do what you and I did in our 20s, to be on tour, to be broke, to be working in a kitchen when you have a family. And
it's impossible.
When it's no longer cute. So yeah, ideally.
It's no longer, romantic.
Absolutely not.
30 is the cutoff where it's like legitimately like that 30 is when it's like everyone's like, all right, dude, it's not cool anymore.
Yeah. And I think.
And 40 is when it gets sad.
But like if you're listening to this, I don't think you should necessarily fucking shoot yourself in the head with a pistol if you're 32 and you haven't made it yet and whatever you're doing.
What does made it mean? I just mean like, I don't mean made it. I mean like have your shit together. Don't be fucking a mess. Don't have like all your relationships in a mess. Don't like have your fucking not like depression like in any way out of control. Don't be like hugely overweight. Like just have your fucking life together. You know, I'm not saying that like there's anything wrong with having any job. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. Like if you want to be a stand-up or if you want to try stand-up and you're 39, you better have a desk job during the day and you better be working after hours.
Yeah.
And you better have an apartment that you rent and some money saved.
Or have made a bunch of money and then you can, that was the biggest advice that if I say I look back when I was 20 that I messed up was I really kind of bought into the idea that like worry about the art and like don't worry about the money. Whereas like I really should have been like, no, it's the opposite. It's like figure out how to make money and then you can actually do your fucking art and get great. Yeah. You know, like the people that fucking ran some company when they were like 20 kind of made like 400K and then like worked for the next, you know, it's you can really do great things with like money is like so necessary. And I think it's like in North America, we tell, maybe in Canada more, but you sort of like, there's that like dirty connotation, but you're like, no, it's just a fucking tool like anything else and you need it. So figure out how to make it and the rest of your life will be easier.
It's like your moral responsibility really because.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it is because if you ask me who the biggest shitbags in the world to me are people who are on welfare, who are having a bunch of kids that they can't pay for. They're probably leading a lifestyle that's going to fuck up their kids, whether it's the stepdad coming in and molesting the daughter or the son growing up to be a gangbanger. The poor, I know the fucking AOC and fucking Joe Biden jerk them off as if they're these fucking angels, but The best people on earth are like T. Boone Pickens and John D. Rockefeller, who donated millions and millions of dollars to charity. They actually did something to help people. Or somewhere in between those two extremes is a person who's able to take care of his family and his parents in old age and his girlfriend and his wife and his kids. And you need money to do that.
Yeah, you can put yourself in a position where you can actually help people as opposed to like, you're like, what's more important? Like, what's better to the world? Like a guy who fucking seemed selfish but actually helped a lot of people, or a person that seemed like they were nice but didn't actually do anything. And I think that's like the fucking
people hated JP Morgan because he cheated on his wife all the time and he fucked up the economy sometimes.
Sorry for being sick.
Yeah, and he smoked a lot of cigars. That was the reason I liked him, was all the philandering. But he also anonymously donated tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions in today's money, to hospitals that took care of poor women. He did all kinds of shit for people, donated massive amounts of money to art museums and to universities. But everybody thinks JP Morgan, oh, he's rich, he must be evil. No.
Yeah, I watched that series, The Men Who Built America. It was pretty crazy. They fucking went through their story. That's recommended if you want to get the scoop on what Danny Mullen's talking about.
If you want to know who JP was fucking, watch Men Who Built America.
Yeah. But I think that's a good place to let you go. But, dude, that was a fucking awesome conversation. You're the man.
That was great, man. I loved it, dude.
What's your socials? Let everyone know where to find you.
Sure, man. Yeah, just Danny Mullen on YouTube is the main thing, and then Danny Mullen on Instagram and Twitter if you care more than the people who just look at the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and if you like my stuff, especially like the street stuff, I'm 90% sure you're going to fucking love Danny. All right, this has been the BOYSCAST.